I am obviously a big fan of testosterone, but also DHT. Now, I personally have never supplemented with any form of testosterone or any steroid or any SARM. So I can't say that I personally have benefited from it or that I would use it. And so, but I'm going to include testosterone with DHT because I have played with DHT and I really enjoy it. Now, I have not taken testosterone for two reasons. First, because I didn't need it, but also second of all, because it is quite problematic. Of all hormones that I'll mention in this video, it's the one that is the most downregulating, the most difficult to get off, to stop taking. Like it takes the longest time for your body to recover and start making its own again out of everything that I'm listing by far. And it's because of that it is very strictly controlled. It is obviously very abused for the reason of, well, for a few different reasons, but I think there are benefits to testosterone that could easily be replaced by DHT. But the main benefit of testosterone that people take it for that is not easily replaced by DHT is its anabolic properties. So basically, the vast majority of men who take it, they do it because they want big muscles. It's really as simple as that. Now, it also makes them feel good. It also makes them feel confident. It also makes them feel strong. It's an anti-stress chemical like we talked about. It actually has... Testosterone has health drawbacks if you have it at super physiological doses, which people often do. Super physiological means more than your body would ever make for itself. So a lot of men take super physiological doses more than their body would ever make for itself because they want bigger muscles. They want bigger muscles than it's really natural to get. I only really got into this like a couple of years ago, but it is actually staggering to realize that. And I realize this is a claim that might be controversial to some, but I think it's becoming more and more well known now that there's very few big muscly guys that you see, especially in this day and age, on models, Hollywood actors, sports people, whatever, who haven't used testosterone to create that effect. So in the same way that for women these days, there's huge amounts of, boob jobs and liposuction and lip fillers and all the rest of it. And so there's a lot of artificial beauty in the realm of women. Well, actually, there's a lot of artificial beauty in the realm of men as well that arguably maybe as much or more. It's ubiquitous. And it's not just those famous people who do it. It's normal people. I remember the guy who helped move our house recently. He's this huge guy and he can lift up a lot of heavy stuff. So, it's good on him that he chose a profession that was very relevant to his, large physique. But, it's very, very frequently used. So even, the guy that you see down the pub, the guy that you see driving the bus, whatever it might be, right? Just in normal life, if they're a huge muscular person, they may well be on either testosterone or something else that acts like testosterone, which is like steroids and SARMs as well. So that's testosterone. Testosterone, has a lot of downsides, as I said, in excess. Out of testosterone, your body makes two main things. It can make estrogen, which is generally considered a bad conversion for everyone, especially men. And that's it's called aromatase, and so there's a whole category of stuff that again bodybuilders take, but even a lot of normal people, aromatase inhibitors. So that's to try and stop that conversion of testosterone to estrogen. Now there's another thing that testosterone can be converted to via something called 5-alpha reductase, and that's DHT, dihydrotestosterone. Now, this one's really controversial, and we've talked about it, I think, in a lot more detail in an episode. So these are supposed to be, bite-sized things. So I'll just talk about why I love it. Why I love it is because, as I've said before, I had really high testosterone above the reference range, and I still, in a lot of ways, was not like a stereotypically high testosterone person. Yes, I don't have big muscles, but that was really more down to digestive issues. Once I sorted out my digestion, I now have normal sized muscles. They're, I'm completely average on the body mass index, but I don't do any resistance training. So that would be the other reason I don't have big muscles. But other than that, I also felt a lot of insecurity. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of reactiveness. I just didn't have that manly, like John Wayne kind of, like nothing, the kind of guy who even in the middle of, a fire or a firefight or whatever, he's like cool and calm and collected. To me, that's the quintessential, like, good part of masculinity, right? I think it's something that everyone respects, right? Men respect it, women respect it. Like, everyone respects that kind of manly, being a rock kind of thing, right? Not being easily moved in a good way. And I just was completely lacking that. And so I thought it's interesting that I have so lack that quality ascribed to testosterone when my testosterone is so high. Now, the obvious first thing you can say about that as well is like a free testosterone, Elwin. And sure enough, when I first noticed this, my testosterone was in the mid-range. So we could say, okay, that could be it because I had high SHBG. But then I got to the point where my testosterone is right at the top of the range. My free testosterone. And I still had all of those same kind of feelings. I was like, still all this lack of manly coolness, cool and calmness. And I was like, huh. And so that's when I discovered DHT. And so it turns out that whereas testosterone is like the number one anabolic hormone, meaning, and specifically in the sense of muscle building, anabolic hormone, DHT is by far the most androgenic hormone. What does androgen mean? Masculine. So,
and masculine in what qualities? The qualities that you were just describing that you didn't feel that you...
Yeah. First of all, libido, sex drive, erection quality, all that, which I didn't have an issue with for whatever other reasons. But second of all, feeling confident. I think confidence is the number one thing. If you ask any woman what's attractive and desirable in a man,
confidence.
They always mention confidence, right? Yeah. Maybe they also say sense of humor and, kindness and lots of other things, but confidence has got to be there. And it's very hard for a woman, and I don't blame them for this at all, to have a lot of respect for a man who's low in confidence, right? They may like him, they may love him, but it's hard to respect someone who's low in confidence. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it definitely. Yeah, I think you're really good. It's naming that in that space of having that confidence that somebody has that's just in them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely, was low in that. Of course, I could have endless excuses for that, my upbringing and this and that. But again, biochemically, it just felt like it shouldn't be the case. Biochemistry should override it. So it turns out that DHT activates your androgen, so again, masculine receptors, up to and often 10 times as much as testosterone. And so what I realized is that probably one of the reasons why my testosterone was so high, sometimes even over the reference range, is not because I'm so goddamn manly, but because not enough of it was being converted into DHT, which was what would actually make me feel genuinely manly. And so, I started researching this, and I started taking nutrients that help that conversion process. And I'm actually in the process of creating a product around that. It's not available yet, but it will be at some point soon. I guess if it is and we remember, we'll put a link underneath. There's certain nutrients and herbs that help with that conversion, the 5-alpha reductase, the conversion of testosterone into DHT. But I also experimented, which I like to do, like with actual just something called 11-keto DHT, just to see the difference. What does it feel like, right? What does it feel like to just suddenly have more DHT? And what I discovered is it feels fantastic. So
let me ask you this, because I get it from the male point of view, but do women have this as well?
So that's an interesting question. So one of the other things that DHT will do is increase your facial hair and body hair. So it's manly qualities. One of the other things it will do is make your voice deeper. It's manly qualities. So do women want to supplement with DHT? If they do, it's a very small amount. Right, now, do women want to supplement with testosterone? Actually, yes. Most bioidentical hormone doctors that specialize women and work with women often do give a bit of testosterone to women. And the main practical reason usually is that it increases sex drive, which it absolutely does.
Is testosterone the main thing about increasing libido, or are there other things too?
Well, the main thing about increasing libido, and this is the thing that is not fully explored and understood, the main thing about increasing libido is DHT. And so this is why to me, there's a reason, some men who are on steroids or TRT feel fantastic, and some of them not as much, although they're still still feel better if they were low testosterone before. I think that DHT is the reason for that. I think DHT is the missing link for that. So all of this is controversial, but I can only relay from my own experience and my own research, and also hearing about other people's experiences. That my theory is that the reason why some people feel on top of the world with testosterone, and a lot of men do testosterone replacement, but not all do, is because some of them are converting enough of it to DHT and not all are. Exactly the same as I was not converting my naturally high testosterone, enough of it, to DHT. So there is some indication, it's a good question, there's not a lot of research here, but there is some research that a very small amount of DHT is actually really beneficial for women as well. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it unless, your goal is to change gender, which is becoming more and more popular these days. But nonetheless, it could give you, a little bit of that. And even testosterone, other than sex drive, I think the other reason why it's good for women to have more, especially, when they're getting older, when their natural levels are low, is because it does give a bit more of that confidence as well that you get with testosterone. What's not clear to me, though, is the confidence coming primarily from the testosterone, or is the confidence coming primarily from the DHT that the body makes out of the testosterone? And it's just not been researched enough because they demonize DHT, which we can talk about in a second. But what I would say is my personal experience, as I said, this is why I give the long anecdote about it. Very high testosterone without high DHT means you don't get most of the benefits of high testosterone. That's my personal experience.
What about hair loss? What's that attributed to? So is it high testosterone, low testosterone, maybe not enough DHT, or is it something else entirely? Because for men, that tends to be an issue.
So different types of hair loss. Like hair loss in women is actually more likely to be low thyroid or low progesterone. Even general hair loss in men could well be low thyroid or low progesterone. But if we're talking about male pattern baldness, which I have, that is usually attributed to DHT. Is it accurately attributed to DHT? This is still something to me that's not settled, but it might be. And so the question is, for men, it's like, do you want to feel manly and have high sex drive and easy erections and high confidence and strength and all the rest of it, or do you want to have a full head of hair, for as long as you live? I mean, it almost seems to be, because to me that's the only real potential downside to DHT. It might be hair loss
of not having enough or having too much.
Too much. That's the only thing that makes there be such a thing as too much to me. Is the potential that it contributes to, specifically male pattern baldness, not hair loss in general. In fact, it increases hair everywhere else, right?
Which is so like, oh my God.
So it's not exactly hair loss, but male pattern baldness specifically. And of course, that's why they sell Propecia and things like that, which finasteride, which reduce DHT, the DHT blockers, they reduce their conversion of testosterone to DHT. And then we have an epidemic of erectile dysfunction, which they handily have another drug for. And we have I would say, an epidemic of a lack of masculinity. How many tough John Wayne type, unfazed, I get on my work and I risk my life for my family and my country and I don't complain about it, and all that kind of guys do we have in this day and age who have that kind of courage, that kind of grit, that kind of resilience? It's almost none, right, compared to 100 years ago. Now, there are cultural reasons for that. There's toxic masculinity. Boys from a very early age these days are kind of subtly and not so subtly trained that it's not good to be masculine. So there's other reasons for it. But even in cultures that are really trying to make their population masculine, like China is an example of that. There's a lot of Asian countries where they're like banning, maybe like in Korea, was it Korea? They were like banning male pop stars that seem too feminine. Like they're desperately trying to masculinize, make the men more masculine in their culture, and yet it's an effort, right? So there's something going on, and too much estrogen is one of the things that's probably impacting that. Too much stress is another thing impacting that. But I do think that things that block the conversion of testosterone to DHT are a big factor. And that's why, although there's more ED than ever before throughout the world, there's especially a lot of it in America, where more people use DHT blockers than anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I would so go down the route of what's that mechanism, what are those things, et cetera, but I know that's not for today. I know if you guys are interested, please let us know in the comments. We will happily do a deep dive on all of that. But yeah, so I'm my interest is piqued, but I know it's not today. But you mentioned and talked about how DHT has been demonized.
Yes. So for those two reasons, number one, the male pattern baldness, and then number two is prostate. Now, in the case of prostate, I really did a really deep dive on this because I was asked to formulate something that helped with prostate. And I could see very clearly when I did the research that DHT has been falsely demonized. And I could tell you the full story about how that's happened. It involves eunuchs. And, but okay, it's a long story. I won't go into it. Basically, bottom line is that they decided that excess DHT causes BPH, which is prostate enlargement, and then ultimately even prostate C word, and as well as male pattern baldness. Now, male pattern baldness, the jury's still out on to me. I'm open to the fact that this may be an unfortunate consequence of being highly androgenic, highly masculine. But the prostate growth, I'm not at all convinced is down to DHT. Why? Because growth is not a function of DHT. As I said, like this compound that's much more anabolic is testosterone, not DHT. But the thing that usually leads to unrestrained proliferation and growth of cells in an unhealthy, potentially very dangerous way is estrogen, not DHT. And one of the only sane pharmaceutical interventions that I have seen that they give for prostate enlargement is progesterone, which makes so much sense because progesterone reduces the effect of estrogen, and it will reduce that undesirable proliferation of cells. And sufficient progesterone supplementation can shrink the prostate. That is the only use of high dose of progesterone that I have ever seen in any medical context, is for men to shrink their prostate when their prostate is too big. Do I think it's only estrogen? Not necessarily. There's also, inflammation is another factor. But estrogen and inflammation, if you've watched our episodes before, you know that those two things really go hand in hand. So I am not a believer in DHT being the primary or significant factor with prostate enlargement. I would be a believer in reduced estrogen and inflammation instead. I'd be happy to stake my own health on that if my prostate ever ended up being enlarged. But I doubt it will, because I keep my progesterone high and my estrogen low. So
testosterone is really there, to helping with building muscle, things like that, and many male qualities. But the DHT, on the other hand, is the confidence in the male qualities, and really working with libido and bringing those things up. And I probably didn't do a very good job. So re-educate me.
Well, yeah. So the key thing, I know we said we're not going to go too much into the mechanism of each one, otherwise, we'll go way too in depth. But the key thing I said about mechanism is this: DHT has 10 times stronger effects on the androgen receptors as testosterone. So it's not that DHT gives the confidence and the sex drive and testosterone doesn't. It's DHT does that way more because it increases androgenic qualities way more than testosterone. Testosterone does it. Now, people who doubt me on that and say, Elwin, I take a huge dose of testosterone, I don't take any DHT, and my sex drive is through the roof and my confidence through the roof, that doesn't contradict what I'm saying, because all it means is that, all it could mean is that they're converting enough of their testosterone to DHT to have that effect. That is what I'm saying. That's the thing that is not being researched enough to see if that's what's actually going on. But that is what I strongly suspect is going on. If you want to be conspiratorial, which I dabble in sometimes, I think it's interesting that they have demonized the primary hormone that leads to male traits as if it is a bad thing, and they sell you drugs to reduce it. And then they have elevated one of the primary hormones that leads to female traits, even though it's actually dangerous, especially for women, and acted as if it's good for you. And with that, I'm talking about DHT and estrogen, right? So I think there's some kind of cultural bias in that. I don't think it's a conspiracy by women or anything, obviously. What I'm talking about is more a conspiracy to make us both sick, right? Because women with too much estrogen, it absolutely, can kill you, and does kill many, 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 many women every day, every year. And men with a lack of DHT are much more easily controlled. They're much more subservient. They're much more servile. They're much more likely to go along with and do what they're told and all the rest of it. A bunch of high DHT men is a bunch of men that is very difficult to control. They're rebellious. They don't do what they're told. And there may be people in a position of power who want to keep power who don't like the idea of a lot of men with a lot of DHT.
No, perfect. I know we're spending a lot of time here, so I do want to ask. I mean, I think that you have really summed up who this is potentially for. So what are the best forms of both of these?
So supplementing DHT is extremely dubious thing to do. It's classed as a research chemical. As I said, there's not enough research in it. The form that I've tried is called 11-keto DHT. And the amount that I've used when I was using it was very small. The absolute minimum amount, and only once every other day. So this is now, having said that, have I seen research study where people were having 20 times as much as me every day for several months without any significant drawbacks? Yes. But the reason why I didn't do any more than that is because I was really trying to encourage my body to produce its own naturally, because in this case, I felt it was possible. As I said before, if it's not possible for your body to create enough, then by all means add it. If my testosterone had been really low and my DHT had been really low, then maybe I would consider, supplementing one, the other, both. But in this case, I felt my testosterone is so high, I just need to get more of it converting into DHT. So that's why I did not do very much. Ironically, even though it's way less researched, and therefore considered more dangerous, I think in reality, from the research I've seen, DHT is way safer to take than testosterone. Because testosterone, first of all, you're going to take it in the form of injection usually, whereas DHT you can just do transdermally. Testosterone will shrink your testicles, whereas DHT will not. Testosterone will reduce or stop your sperm production, whereas DHT will not. Testosterone will downregulate, and if you suddenly stop, you're going to feel really bad, which, as far as I saw, DHT will not. So through a lot of mechanisms, DHT actually seems a hell of a lot safer thing to supplement than testosterone, even bioidentical testosterone, TRT. But there's just no one's done it, and there's no research on it. Not no one, as I said, there's some studies I saw where people were taking 10 milligrams of DHT a day, 20 milligrams, even more, which is way more than your body would make itself. So it's even a super physiological dose of DHT for weeks or months didn't seem to have major side effects. But very limited studies. There's so much more studies going on with testosterone. And I don't even know, I haven't come across a bioidentical hormone doctor yet who had prescribed DHT. So you'd really be off on your own. So it's a great shame. I'm not saying this to encourage anyone to take any risks with their health. I'm saying this more to kind of like create interest to hopefully make it so that there is more research and that there are doctors who actually learn enough about this so that they can perhaps give men this thing that's actually far safer and more effective.
How would somebody use it?
If you really wanted to be cavalier and ignore all my precautions, you might find yourself some 11-keto DHT, and it might be in a liquid form, and you might apply very, very small amounts to your skin and use it transdermally. And
I mean, you really did pretty much cover it, but are there any additional safety concerns here within testosterone and DHT?
At the extremely low minimal amounts that I'm saying, from what I've seen with the limited research, the risks are extremely less than the usual TRT.
All right, so what I'm hearing here is proceed with caution. Very much so. and dig deeper and look into it.
Yeah, and if you find someone if you find a doctor who does prescribe it to you and you want to share their details here, maybe they're struggling to find clients because no one wants it, right? This is one of the other issues. So if you find someone who gets what I'm talking about, who's done more research, who has that clinical experience, share it with the rest of us, please. And that would be great. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Rejuvenate podcast. If you want to watch the full episode that came from, just click on the link above. Or if you just want to watch our latest video, then click the link below. And make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you.